Please welcome now the Imus William Prick, guy we've been trying to get on for a long time, and here he is from HBO and so on. Bernard Goldberg. Good morning, Mr. Goldberg.
Hey, how you doing, Don?
How are you?
Good. I got in last night, kind of late. Didn't want to stay at the hotel, and I went out to a show.
What'd you say?
Last night. It was a ventriloquist show. I love ventriloquist shows. They're really funny, right? So this ventriloquist, is doing dumb blonde jokes.
Right.
It's hilarious. I mean, it was really fall down funny. And partway through the show, this blonde gets up and she's furious. I mean, furious.
Is this a true story?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's furious. And you ready for this?
Yeah.
The blonde who gets up, Lee Sweel from Blonde on Blonde, right? So she gets up and she says, I've had it with this crap. This dumb blonde jokes. I'm a blonde. I'm not dumb. This is an insult not just to blondes. This is an insult to all women. I am sick of this garbage. And the ventriloquist got all flustered, and he said, I mean, no disrespect. And Lee says, shut up. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to that little jerk sitting on your lap. That's a true story.
There it is.
That's a true story.
Bernard Goldberg was with CBS News for how long?
28 years.
And won 12 Emmys, right?
6 there and 6 at HBO.
Okay. When you wrote Bias, which was a startling book, even for people who didn't care all that much about the media. Everyone knew it was a New York Times #1 bestseller.
Right.
Because it was the first time somebody inside
Exactly.
had acknowledged that there was a bias in this particular case, network news. My question is, did you write it because you didn't agree with what their bias was, or did you write it because you thought it was fundamentally wrong what they were doing?
The latter, and that's a great question. I'm against bias in the news. I'm not just against liberal bias. I'm against conservative bias, and there are places that practice that too much for my taste.
No.
So these media watchdog groups that on the right you have the Media Research Center that does superb work exposing only liberal bias. And then you have these Media Matters goof-offs who only care about conservative bias. I care about bias in the news. And I wrote the book because I had seen things in 28 years. Actually, not just in 28 years. It was in the latter part of that. And I was a liberal.
No.
I was a liberal. And I said, this just isn't right, guys. This is not right. And I talked to people off the record, behind the scenes, like a good soldier. They never told me to get lost, but I might as well have been talking to the wall. And then they did one story that wasn't sexy at all. It was about Steve Forbes' flat tax, which was, they just made fun of it. There was a report on CBS Evening News that made fun of it from top to bottom. And I said, that's it. I've had it. And I wrote this op-ed in the Wall Street Journal and stayed with CBS for another 5 years and quit to write Bias.
So when that article appeared in the Wall Street Journal, what did they say around there?
Oof. It was the media version of World War III. Dan Rather was in Iowa covering the Iowa caucuses in 1996, February. I knew the piece was coming out the next day, and I called him up. I was in New York, and I said, Dan, I wrote something that's going to be in the Wall Street Journal tomorrow, and you're not going to be happy about it, and I need to give you a heads up. So he didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And he said, these are his exact words, 1996 till today, and I'll give you his exact words.
Sure.
Bernie, we were friends yesterday, we're friends today, we'll be friends tomorrow. What'd you write? And I told him I wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal about liberal bias in the news that mentioned specifically a piece that was on his air. From that day in February of 1996 to this day in May 2014, Dan hasn't uttered a syllable to me, not a syllable.
Yeah.
And
I'm not surprised at all.
no, and I'm not losing any sleep over it.
No.
But all I said was what conservatives were saying in their living rooms or to their closest friends. I caught up with the American people. I mean, to the extent that I broke ground, it's that the term liberal bias is now out there. Everybody knows what it means.
Yeah.
I mean, I had every publisher in Manhattan turn down that book. Every single one turned down that book. And some of them wrote notes saying, this is a sort of an interesting, a well-written book, but I don't know what he's talking about. What is liberal bias? Everybody knows what it means now.
And it still exists.
Yeah, and you can make a case it's even worse now,
Yeah.
but it still exists, yeah.
So I always thought rather, well, I knew him pretty well for a while, was condescending and patronizing to people. And I always thought, and I wasn't necessarily, I mean, I lived in Manhattan for 40 years, so, but I wasn't a real Manhattan liberal. I just was drunk most of the time. But I thought, I always thought he was doing the news for his friends,
Yeah,
who he would meet at the lanes or wherever he went.
right.
And I used to actually get irritated about it, and having no particular political agenda, but just offended that it was clearly biased. So
I think you're right. A lot of them do the news for their friends at what used to be Elaine's, or she's not there anymore, but
Yeah.
Elaine's. But I started
well,
out
she's
with
dead, Bernie. But
yeah, I know that's why she's not there.
no, yeah.
Well, if she were
Well,
there,
you say she's not there like she's somebody else.
no, but if she were there and dead, I don't think a lot of people would have
No.
lunch there. But
Very good.
but I mean, I could be wrong about that. But here's the thing: I started out with one complaint, just one.
Yeah.
Bias in the news. That's not my biggest complaint now. My biggest complaint is their elitism. They don't have any. You think they'd have any respect for somebody like you with your background and where you came from and what you did for a living before you did radio if you weren't Don Imus? They don't respect people who live between Manhattan and Malibu.
No.
They look down their elitist noses at people like that. I come from the South Bronx. I'm from Bernie McGurk's neighborhood.
Yeah.
I'm just offended by that.
How did you develop this relationship with O'Reilly?
They called me. I didn't call
Right.
them.
Yeah.
I think what Bill does very well, besides being a very, very good broadcaster, and he's a very smart guy, by the way, very smart guy. I think what he does is he doesn't want people on the show just ranting and raving and pontificating. He wants people who know something about something.
Uh-huh.
And he figured, rightly or wrongly, I know something about the media, so they called me up and they said, would you come on? And I said, as a regular. And I said, yeah, okay.
So when you began that relationship, what did the people like Brian Gumbel and Mary Carrillo, Frank DeFord, and those folks say?
Let me tell you something about HBO that's different from CBS. They don't care. They don't care.
I love Mary Carrillo. by the
Yeah,
way.
so do I. So do I.
She's brilliant, by the way.
When I wrote Bias, before it came out, it was written, but before it came out, I was now at HBO.
Yeah.
So I went to the then president of HBO Sports and I said, look, I want to make sure we don't have a problem here. I wrote a book and it's about liberal bias in the media. And he said, and they're all, I think it's a safe bet to say most of them are liberals.
Yeah.
Maybe even more liberal than people at CBS. And he said, I don't care. It's if you make a case and it's a good case, I don't have to agree with it or anything. They would never say that at CBS. So the very thing that makes HBO a good place to watch shows, because it's creative and different and all that, that's the atmosphere in that place. Nobody has ever, not once said to me, I heard what you said on O'Reilly, knock it off. Not once. By the way, at some point, I'm enjoying this, by the way. I hope you are. Are you having a good time?
Well, what are you? What the hell
I'm
are you-
just
what are you,
asking.
drunk?
I'm just
What are you-
asking.
Well,
That's
no,
all.
what is a good time? Yes, I wouldn't do this. I guess
Well,
having a good time. We liked you. We invited you on the program.
I care about your well-being.
Is he a
But
date?
I
We
would
don't.
li-
I don't have people on who I don't want on.
No, I understand.
Okay.
But if at some point,
Well, having a good time is. I don't know. Yes, I guess.
You stumped him with that one.
Well, this is interesting.
if at some point I could clear my name about stealing.
You did steal that line
Well,
from me.
can I
Oh,
explain?
sure. Yeah, if you
May
can.
I
Well,
explain?
and then did it on Megyn Kelly's show without attribution.
Let's explain what the line was.
Yes, sir.
You delivered a great line saying something along the lines of, you want to know how big the Donald Sterling story is? It knocked the Malaysian jet story off of CNN. later that day on Megyn Kelly, I said something like, well, no, not something like, I said word for word
What I said.
what you said.
Yeah.
I am neither confirming or denying that I heard you say it. Okay, let's get that straight.
That's fine.
But can I try to explain funny to you? I mean, I mean no disrespect, but can I try to? Let's say somebody says to you, "Hey Don, how's your wife?" And you say, "Compared to what?" You don't have to say, as Henny Youngman used to say, "Compared to what?" You just say, "Compared to what?" If somebody says, "Hey Don, have a good one," you know that line, "Have a good one."
This is really a weak defense of this.
Well, I'll be done,
Go
done
ahead.
in 30 seconds.
No, you got
If they
plenty
say,
time.
"Hey Don, have a good one,"
Yeah.
you don't have to say, "I already have a good one. I want a bigger one."
Yeah.
I mean, you say that, that's funny.
Yeah.
You don't have to say, as my pal George Carlin used to say,
Yeah.
"I already have a good one. I want a bigger one."
Yeah.
So
This is not. This
it's
is not
something
working.
along those lines.
No, it's not.
And the line wasn't to be or not to be. I didn't take that.
This is an outrage.
I don't know.
You stole a great line.
I stole.
And I was
stole.
watching it.
To say stole, well, I will say this.
What?
As I was sitting there on live TV,
Sure.
I consciously said to myself, he can't possibly be watching this.
Yeah. Son of a-
So anyway, what can you watch to get an unvarnished, unbiased view of the news?
Yeah, that's a real important question. And I'm here at Fox, and the easy answer would be, I would say that the Bret Baier Show is the best news show on television. And you could hook me up to a lie detector test, and the needle wouldn't budge.
Yeah.
I mean that. I'm not saying that because I'm in the Fox building. But as a rule, I don't think you could just watch one thing or read one newspaper. I know people have jobs. They don't have all day to sit around
Yeah.
watching TV or reading newspapers. But you can't just do one thing. I mean, everybody has a point of view these days. I don't like that. I don't like that. And the Bret Baier Show is
You don't like that everybody. Well, I see what you're saying.
not in a news show.
Yes, I agree. So,
Yeah.
I like Shep Smith too. You don't like him?
Well, on the radio, people are going, hello, are we on?
Yeah. Well, no, that's fine.
Everybody has their favorites.
See, O'Reilly doesn't let you talk enough, and we let you talk this morning. It's great.
Well, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this.
Okay. Thank you very much.
This was fun.
Bernard Goldberg here in the I'm Wayne program. 12 minutes now until the